Why we fear God. Did that prickle you? Did that cause you being like, Ashley, what are you talking about? I don't fear God. I love God. And I thought the same thing until I was faced with some questions and some reality of, welcome back to one's journey of unwinding the mind and, of course, your daily microdose. Now tune in to the latest episode of One's Journey. Today's topic is maybe going to be a little controversial, so just stick with me. It's why we fear God. I don't fear God. I love God. And I thought the same thing until I was faced with some questions. One, do I see myself separate than others? Yeah. At times, I'm getting better at the oneness. Do I judge others? Yep. At times. Do I get irritated with others? Even the smallest irritation. Yep. At times. Am I living in this illusion? Yep. That's what I'm experiencing. Of those questions, if you answered yes to any of them, then my response is you do still fear God. That is the holy grail. When you can get over the fear of God and the fear of his wrath and the fear that you hurt him, therefore he is going to retaliate, that's when truth is unlocked. That's when you realize you are one with God and you fully accept the love and you are fully back with him. Really, what you are truly afraid of is your own potential. It isn't really at the end of the day the fear of God per se, but your own reality, because God represents that. If we go back to the initial separation or our belief of the initial separation, we believe we essentially killed God or separated ourselves from God, whatever you think. We removed God from the equation and then we ran off and created this own place. And so therefore, God is what contains the reality, contains the truth, which is not this illusion. So God represents the remembrance of this not being truth, that this illusion being made up, that this is a place we ran to because we needed to project out all of the shame and guilt that we have from that tiny mad idea. For example, and it's the Course in Miracles or Ken Wapnick or someone says within those people that it's much easier for people who have studied psychology to begin to grasp this, because in psychology we're taught that we project your own fears out onto other people. And if you checked out the other video, that essentially projection is perception. We project onto others what we are feeling within ourselves. And that's what I mean when I talk about that. We're not really scared of God. We're scared of our own reality, but God is our projection of it. That is our way to get it out of ourselves and place it externally and be like, nope, I'm upset with God. And so some of those questions I asked you had to do with within this illusion. Do you see yourself separate from other individuals? Do you see yourself separate from this illusion? Do you often get irritated with others? Not even often. Do you just get irritated with others, even the smallest bit? Do you cast judgment on others, even the smallest bit? We're on this journey to truth. So just own it. I own it that I'm not perfect yet, or it would be time to lay my body aside. The reason why those are questions that I ask is because when we acknowledge God and we acknowledge reality and we're no longer fearful of it, we acknowledge the oneness. Our subconscious knows that you are me and I am you, that I am God. And not that the new age belief that we are all little gods here to experience, but I am of God. I am a thought of God, a piece of God within God. Not like I am this little walking around God and I can do as much as God can do. I just want to clarify that. So when I get irritated with Patrick, first of all, it has nothing to do with Patrick if you go back to like Psychology 101 and everything to do with me, the own shit that's going on inside of me. But also, he's a representation of my biggest fear, which is retaliation from God. We're taught that we're these sinners and that the wrath of God is going to come on us. And instead, our way to circumvent that is to be able to identify the sinners outside of us. I'm mad at Patrick because the way he treated me, it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with him. Therefore, at the end of the day, God will not take his wrath out on me, but Patrick, because Patrick's the one being an ass. See, again, I projected that out, and you're not consciously thinking all of this, remember? I mean, to be honest with you, the more you move on this journey, and I don't know where you're at listening to this video, you start to get kind of conscious of it, if not in the moment, after the moment. And that's that awareness. We cannot change what we are not aware of. And that goes into this with the fear of God. I'll cover a little piece of that. And the reason why we're really talking about this is because if we don't own it, if we don't acknowledge the depths of the insanity of the ego in our thought system, Jesus cannot help us. Because he cannot offer us a solution for something we do not even acknowledge or have awareness that it exists. So it's not about sitting and dwelling in it. It's sitting in observation, owning it. Yeah, I still fear God. And this is how it plays out in my life. And I'm asking for your assistance to move through this, to help me to see truth, to guide me to that place of no more fear of God. But you can't even ask a question that you're not aware of. And that's why in a lot of my videos, I always say step one is awareness. You can't change anything you aren't aware of. That's why this video is so important. And as much as it prickles, take a step back and get real with yourself. Because unless you are already enlightened, there is no way that you can answer no to all of those questions I asked at the beginning. Let's just face it. That is the epitome of the ego belief system. And if we were fully untied from the ego belief system and enlightened, you might not be listening. You probably wouldn't even be listening to my videos. You probably wouldn't even be on the internet, and most likely wouldn't even be here anymore. You would have laid your body aside. But we must understand the ego. We must understand the ego and its belief system in order to change it. Remember that. When we project on others, and we see them as the sinner, which is irritation, anger, frustration with other people, that's acknowledging that they did something wrong. That's judgment as well. If you answered no to judgment and yes to irritation, essentially you answering yes to both, because you only can have irritation by bringing judgment to someone else's actions. By doing that, again, you are projecting your own fear within, that you fucked up. You believe subconsciously somewhere that God is out to get you because you got him first. The back and forth mentality, the eye for an eye. But in fact, it's not true. It's not true at all. And that is where it's not focusing on the effect. The effect is us casting our judgment and our fear and living in the solution and believing the solution and coming from the ego belief system is the effect of the cause. And the cool thing is, I'll only touch briefly on this, is that we don't fuck with the effect. Fucking with the effect is like putting out fires. Not putting out fires per se, but like there's a forest fire and you just put out one tiny fire, a new one starts here, a new one starts there. It's not getting to the cause. It doesn't actually work. So you have to go back to the cause of it. And the only way to do that, the only illusionary tool we have is forgiveness. Because in fact, forgiveness is of the illusion. Let's just be honest, but it is the only piece within the illusion that is used to untie you from the illusion instead of tying you deeper into the illusion. There will be another video if it's not already out, and it will be about focusing on the cause rather than the effect and how it shows up in our life, how sickness, death, all of that is actually the effect, not the cause. Other thoughts in regards to the fear of God. When you think of it, the topics I've shared have been deeper level, subconscious. But when we talk about like our actual words we use when we go through a really hard time in life and they're like, God needed me to experience that so that I could do X, Y, and Z. AKA, God made me suffer. God was out to get me. He made me suffer. I remember I had a friend die of cancer at a very young age, and I had heard this statement before, but it hit differently when he passed away, that God, when he died, there was a card or something that my friend got in the mail, and it said that God only picks the most beautiful flowers to bring back home to him. Again, God making you suffer because he took away a beautiful flower. So we're constantly talking about how, God made it rain, enjoy the rain. God gave you darkness, enjoy the darkness. So even our words are that of God being this force that causes pain and suffering and just ickiness. Though there's deeper levels of subconscious, there's also this just standard language and understanding we have that God sends us really hard things. God puts us through hell so that we can experience the light, which not true. And that goes into duality. But even by saying those words, even if you don't believe them, your words are just a projection of what you believe. I was talking to a client the other day, and she says these words that align with all or nothing, and she doesn't think she's in all or nothing. And I said, well, you are, because you wouldn't use those words if you didn't have a small piece of you at least that still believes that within you. And it's understanding and uncovering that. And again, the only way to overcome this fear of God is to first look at how fucked up the ego is and how much the fear of God shows up in your life, but then be open to receive the assistance and to practice forgiveness at the level of the mind, realizing that none of this ever happened. That's the easy version of it. It's much deeper than that. But in the end, when you are projecting this fear out, you are attacking yourself, and you are of God. So it's this cyclical event of constantly projecting, then constantly taking on, and then constantly running. And that is why we fear God. That is the outlook of how the fear of God shows up in our life, but also the original reason why we fear God, which is ultimately because he is a representation of our reality. We have projected that out onto him. And if we have to face the reality, we have to face that this illusion is not real, that this illusion is not truth, and that we got ourselves here. And we've got to get ourselves out. Nobody wants to admit that. Again, if we go back to the statements we say, we constantly place blame on God, even if we say it in a positive manner of like, oh, God took my child at a young age because he only takes the most beautiful flowers. Oh, God caused me to get into a car accident today so I could get a new car. No, God doesn't do that, FYI. This video may have prickled you. This video may have presented a lot of questions for you. I know for me it does, because like consciously I'm like, I don't fear God. I don't fear God at all. Like, I want to go home with God. But the reality is my actions don't show up to that. My reality doesn't mirror that I am fully accepting of the love of God. Otherwise, I would be outside of the dream 100%. I would realize I was the dreamer of the dream and at home, in bed, whatever you want to say, wrapped in the love of God, a piece of God and a piece of all of you. One day, I will be there. And one day you will too. But until we get there, we got to own our shit, man. We got to face the truth in order to ask for assistance, in order to receive our own assistance, and to untie ourselves from the ego. What you do not bring from the hidden corner to the light, it just continues to run your life. So getting honest is huge, and I hope this video today helped you to really understand why you really fear God, to understand that you do fear God. It's not easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it. So give yourself kudos for truly taking this path. It takes work and dedication, but when you get that taste of truth, like I know you have, or you wouldn't be here, it's you got to go there. You're like, man, I need truth. Share. I would love to hear what this brought up within you, what areas you see that you are still fearing God, and how this helped you get to a different level of ownership and awareness so that you can continue to untie that ego. As always, remember you are worth it. Lots of love.